Hi, I'm Malcolm Stern, and in conjunction with my friends John and Sandra Wilson from Online Events, we're creating a series of podcasts called Slay Your Dragons with Compassion. My book of the same name was conceived and inspired by the suicide of my daughter Melissa and the journey that took me on and the internal resources that I found. All of my guests will have a story to tell around overcoming and ultimately thriving through adversity. Special thanks to the band Stairway, Jim McCarty and Louis Chinamo, for the use of theme music from their album Medicine Dance, and my engineer Owen Santiago. I hope you enjoy this series, and thanks for listening. So welcome to my podcast, Slay Your Dragons with Compassion, which I'm making in conjunction with my friends at Online Events. And I'm getting a range of amazing speakers who have extraordinary stories to tell. And today is a particularly extraordinary story of conquering a life-threatening illness in an extraordinary way. So I'm really happy to welcome a very old friend, John Hagger. And John, welcome to you and welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Malcolm. Lovely to be here.
And I think I first came across you a few decades ago, actually, and you had recovered from you had been told was a terminal illness and that you only had months to live. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and your journey with that?
Well, I was 42. That was just over 30 years ago. Um, and it was a classic midlife crisis kind of thing. Everything was falling apart. My marriage was on the rocks. My business, I was a financial advisor at the time. I'd had a very checkered history, but I found my way into selling life insurance on a commission only basis. And I was doing that for 7 years. And it was at a time when everything was very buoyant in the economy. And, it was just a very interesting business to be in at the time. Um, and so, but all good things come to an end. And the bubble burst anyway. And I don't know, I'm sure you remember 1992, crashes everywhere, wars in the Middle East. And lots of my clients went down and took me with them. So financially, I was on the rocks as well. And then, hey ho, along came a cancer diagnosis at the same time. So it was a very difficult time. Um, I managed to patch up things with my wife because our priorities became very different. Um, at this stage, the diagnosis wasn't serious or life threatening, but it was definitely a call to action, and I realized that I had to make changes was the main thing. So I did some introspection. I changed my lifestyle, changed my diet, and and tried to carry on. Um, However, 9 months later, secondaries appeared. I was told, so I was diagnosed with melanoma, um, and I think it was stage two because it was quite in the doctor's terms, it was quite deep. And I think they did expect a recurrence, but they were quite positive with me and said, "I'll go away and just hope that everything will be okay." But anyway, nevertheless, 9 months later, I had a recurrence. I had a lump under my arm, which was clearly a secondary. I mean, that's where they told me it would appear, but it wasn't a painful lump. It was, and they said that it would be, if it came, it would be hard and painless. Um, and so it was very scary. And then I just had to wait to have the biopsy done, which was interesting because in the time between the primary and the secondary appearing, I'd done some research and decided that in the event of a recurrence that I would do a nutritional therapy. My background before financial services was health foods. I had health food shops and I was very interested in nutrition. All my life my grandmother was seeing a naturopath and my mum took me to the homeopathic hospital as a child. So we were very, in medical terms, quite alternative. I then went into the health food business. This was before financial services, and my natural inclination was to go to nutrition to heal my illness. And I had a friend who was a homeopathic doctor, and he said to me the only thing he knew that was good for melanoma particularly and cancer in general is Gerson therapy. Gerson is he was a German doctor. He died in 1959. His name was Max Gerson. His daughter Charlotte Gerson was running a clinic in Mexico, and so I guess there wasn't anything else. It was before the internet, so I wasn't there. There weren't lots of options being fed to me. There was, it was diagnosed as a stage 3 melanoma, so it was in my lymphatic system. When I went in, just backtracking a bit, when I went into the operating theatre, I'd made it really clear that I didn't want to have all my lymph nodes taken out. I really just wanted a diagnosis at that point so they could take out one lymph node because I'd heard that the normal procedure was if they suspected that one lymph node was malignant, they would remove everything. On the basis that if one lymph node was malignant, then it would have already spread. But I didn't want that. I just wanted a diagnosis because for me, I was going to go to Mexico to the clinic, and I was going to have nutrition be my healer rather than anything else. So I got the diagnosis within a few days. The doctor called me, very quickly. He was the surgeon and he said, very sorry, but this is the situation. And I booked a plane to Mexico.
Wow. That's quite an extraordinary thing to do, isn't it? At that stage, it's like you are sort of feeling like, oh my God, I might be dying. But actually, what I'm hearing is this very strong state of mind. I am going to deal with this my way. And you got the information you could get from where you could get it, and then you sort of took yourself off on a major adventure. So what happened in Mexico?
Well, just making the decision wasn't difficult, Malcolm. The surgeon, he was really helpful by saying to me, well, I could offer you chemotherapy, but I don't think it's going to be very effective for you.
Wow.
So that was kind of interesting, because it wasn't like, maybe if he'd have said things differently, if he'd have said, well, yeah, well, the new chemotherapy situation, the new chemotherapy regime that we're running now is really effective with, with your condition, and I think you'll do really well. But instead, he didn't say that. He said, I don't think it's going to be very helpful for you. So
in effect, I think what I'm hearing is that he was probably saying you're going to die either way, so you might as well not have the chemotherapy. Was that pretty much it?
He did, yeah. And he also said, "You've got months, not years."
Aha, so he was clearly saying you're dying.
Yeah, and yet
And
I didn't feel like I was dying. You know,
yeah,
I wasn't feeling sick. I just had this diagnosis. Um, so, but actually, in the couple of weeks following, and before I got on the plane to Mexico, I did start to feel myself going downhill. But whether that was psychosomatic or not, I don't
so
know.
you got on the plane, you got to Mexico, you got to this clinic, and some of our listeners will know the Gerson regime, but you can perhaps give us a headline about what it entails.
Yeah, well, it's a bit like a fast-flowing river. You know, you go into the hospital and they always arrange admissions to be sort of very early morning, so that you can just jump in and you know just it's incredible. It's just the whole time it's just juices. So okay, so for people who don't know Gerson therapy, it's a regime which was pioneered by a German doctor, um, and it it's just the same routine every single day from the morning you get up until from the moment you get up till the moment that you go to sleep. You
And that's
wake up,
basically juice after juice after juice,
yeah, but every other morning there's castor oil to take at 6 o'clock in the morning, you know.
just to sweeten the process. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, followed by a cup of coffee, strangely.
Really? Wow.
So it's castor oil followed by coffee, drinking coffee, and then after that you go in for I think a coffee enema. I think you do next, and then you have breakfast. And you can always tell the patients that are on a castor oil day because they're literally grey. You know, I mean, it's it's grim. Um, and then about 11 o'clock, you have castor oil again, but this time it's in an enema with coffee. So you have a coffee and castor oil enema at around 11 o'clock. So there's this period between 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock where you've got this castor oil that you've taken orally. And the effect, the effect is like, I, I guess it's I guess it's the detoxification effect. You get really foggy. It's almost like driving down a motorway and you can't see out because there's fog. And then all of a sudden the fog clears and you can see clearly. And that's like when you have that castor oil enema at 11 o'clock, the fog clears, you let it out, and it's amazing. It's an amazing experience because when you let it out, it's taking all of the built up toxins.
Wow.
Because it's a very liver related um, therapy. It's a major detoxification, um, and obviously the organ of detoxification is the liver.
And you spent months in this clinic, didn't you?
No, actually, no. I spent 3 weeks in that clinic,
Okay, so okay, that's
but it was long enough for me to understand the therapy. It was long enough for me to go through all of the initial um, reactions to the therapy, um, because it's a major, major detox. Uh, my eyes changed color,
wow.
which was very interesting. I came out with blue eyes. I went in with kind of green eyes. Hazel was my mum. My mum always told me I had hazel eyes, but I came out of that out of that clinic after 3 weeks with blue eyes. So that was weird.
Maybe you were taken over by an alien, John, or so.
Well, it reminded me of some studies I'd done in iridology previously. Anyway, that's another subject. So, um, I, it was important to be there for 3 weeks. They say that you should be there for 3 weeks because, you go through all sorts of changes, important changes when you start the therapy. It also gives you a chance to take advantage of the lectures. There's some really interesting lectures. The two main people were Charlotte Gerson. She would come in once a week, I think, once or twice a week. And the other person was Gar Hildenbrand. Now, Gar was a really fascinating man. And Charlotte has died sadly now, but Gar is running the Gerson Research Organization in San Diego. He is the most knowledgeable person I know on the subject of alternative cancer treatments. And whereas Charlotte stayed very much with the work of her father, Gar has moved with the times. This did cause a little bit of friction between them, but Gar split off and he's now working very closely with some clinics in Southern California, in San Diego, where there's some really interesting new developments happening in the field of alternative cancer medicine. In fact, the boundaries between alternative cancer medicine and conventional cancer medicine are becoming blurred now. In the old days, it was very simple. You either did chemotherapy, surgery, radiation, the orthodox way, and then and the alternatives were very much separate to that. But now there's a sort of a coming together, I think, which is very interesting.
So you came out after 3 weeks, John, and then it's sort of then you have to manage on your own, but you've learned the basic ropes. So you're then carrying on the process, presumably, or is 3 weeks enough? And then you go back to an ordinary life? No.
No, so you never go back to an ordinary life after a terminal diagnosis, I don't think. Um, it's my life is life before cancer and life after cancer very clearly. But
It's interesting that a lot of what we've done on this show have been people who've come through extraordinary adversity, including me, where I lost my daughter.
yeah,
And that changes you forever. And that's what you're saying effectively, is it
yeah,
changed you forever.
yeah. The therapy was the therapy. It's a blanket prescription therapy. So it's like you do this every single day at these times. So you get up, you have the enemas, you have the juices, you have the meals. The meals are always the same. No protein, no oil. Actually, the only oil was flax oil, but very, very little protein. Eventually, you're allowed to have cottage cheese, but it's all very much juices and vegetables and um, not much else, uh, certainly for the first 3 or 4 months. But the therapy itself lasts for 2 years. So you're supposed to continue the therapy uh, at the same intensity for a period of 2 years after tumors disappear.
Right.
So
So
after the
it's not a
symptoms
quick
disappear,
fix.
do it for 2 years. Pardon?
It's not a quick fix. And also you have to have what I've seen in you is this tenacity to drive your way through it. Because a lot of people probably falter along the way and don't stick with the process.
Well, it's interesting you say that because um, so Gar Hildenbrand did a study on Gerson therapy and melanoma. Melanoma it was like the flagship disease for Gerson. They did a retrospective study, um, and they came up with some stunning figures. Something like 60% remission after 5 years with stage 3 melanoma. I mean, I'm saying that off the top of my head. It might be different, but anyway, compared to conventional medicine, it was significantly better. So they had the study peer reviewed, and one of the reviewers, a woman called Jean Achterberg, um, she her her I suppose if you say criticism of the study was that your people are different to begin with, she said to Gar.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. So
It,
I thought that
it
was very
reminds me of
astute.
it reminds me of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who I assisted for a while when she was running workshops, and she used to work with cancer patients, and she would get them to draw their cancer, and from the drawings, she had an artist who worked with her who would work out whether they would be more suited to conventional treatment or alternative treatment, and so clearly you fitted the alternative. It's like you had a clear path towards that treatment, especially from your upbringing before that. And by the way, I'm not knocking conventional medicine either. I'm just, and I know you're not either, but for you, this is what happens.
Yeah. It was I the way I responded to the therapy, my doctor in Mexico said, and Charlotte Gerson, in fact, said I was a textbook case. So my body responded in the way that they expected, without complications.
That's really interesting. And now, 30 years on, you're not only, I mean, I've seen you go through another shift as well because you've actually taken on a big diet because you were a bit roly-poly before when I knew you, and now you're slim and you've done something again with diet that's
Mm.
changed yourself. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about that, not in sort of in great detail, but a little bit about what you're doing with diet as well now.
Well, I think it's related. Um, so I do things. I'm quite intense and obsessive. Um, and when I was doing the carrot juices, I felt like, and in fact, my son was making the juices for me as well a lot of the time. And his thing was, well, you know, if an 8 ounce juice is going to make you better, a 16-ounce juice is actually going to make sure that you're going to get better. So, you know, he would double up on the carrots. But what I realize now is that he also doubled up on the sugar.
Aha.
Um, and it, I did some kind of interesting experiments with carrot juicing afterwards. And I found that if you put the pulp back in again to the press, because we used a press, if you put the pulp back in after you've extracted the juice and you press it again, what comes out is a very clear liquid. And if you drink that clear liquid, you'll realize that it's just pure sugar. Um, and one of my symptoms, even though I was able to regress because I went to Mexico with a lymphatic tumor that got bigger and bigger over the course of the 3 weeks and actually exploded inside me. I wanted to put this bit in, even though it's not relevant to what I'm saying there, but I just wanted to put that in because it's very
Sure.
significant that my body actually destroyed the tumor, that the tumor actually became inflamed, and the typical symptoms of inflammation are heat, swelling, redness, pain. Um, it became bigger and bigger, more and more painful, and then literally exploded inside me. And that happened 11 days after I arrived in Mexico. I wanted to put that in.
Yeah, yeah.
But the thing about the sugar was that I was getting hypoglycemic um, episodes during the therapy. And I wasn't sure, I didn't understand what they were. I thought that it was the effect of the detoxification. Um, but what I realize now in retrospect is that it was the excess sugar. And as I got older, these hyperglycemic episodes have become more regular. Um, and I would say that I was probably pre-diabetic because I was eating sugar in all different forms. Not only, I mean, I moved on from the Gerson therapy and I just lived a normal life and was um, eating all sorts of things,
So you
but
did your 2 years being quite strict, and then you just let
very,
it go.
very strict. But then, that was, a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
Um, and then, I've been back out there doing my thing um, and then, in terms of my diet then became very lax, and I just found myself eating loads of sugar and becoming more um, with more hyperglycemic episodes, and just feeling like, wow, I've got to do something about this. I thought if I can, and then I just caught myself. I was driving back from my son's one night in London. And I just caught myself just having gone into the garage, filled up with petrol, got a bar of chocolate, a bar of something else, and was just sitting there eating it. And I just thought, what am I doing? It was on, I mean, I thought, well, I've got to do this just to keep awake for the drive back to Devon. And I just thought, what am I doing? If I carry on doing this, I'm going to end up diabetic. Um, so I changed there and then. I just made the change. I stopped sugar, um,
You mean just
and
like that?
just like that. Yeah, it was a realization. And then a bit later, I met a man. I told you the other day, Malcolm. I met a guy from Israel, from Tel Aviv, and he introduced me to ketogenic diet, and um, and that was it really. Again, I just changed. Like, okay, I'm on the keto from now.
And so it feels like you are able, once you get on in a groove, you're able to stick with it. I think that's one of the features I can see about you, that actually there's a doggedness that you are going to follow a trail.
Yeah, yeah, dogged is the word, but it's very annoying for some people because my wife particularly because it's also quite obsessive. Um,
No, that's
it's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it?
well, it is, but actually, what I can see and what I've seen in you over the years is that your health feels better and better as you're into your 70s now. Are you
I'm
there?
73 now, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we're similar age. And so what I see at this stage is that actually you feel healthy, vibrant, well, and you've been through the mill, and you've also disciplined yourself very deeply. I think that's one of the things I observe about you is this total discipline, which
Mm,
is not that easy to come by. And
mm,
and in your case, it's obviously inherent in you. But for
mm.
someone like me, I'll meditate for a while and then I'll just go, well, I won't do it this morning. Then it'll drip away. Whereas I'm hearing you've stuck with the ketogenic diet for a couple of years, a few
Uh,
years,
5 years now.
5 years. So 5 years you've stuck with this diet. It's changed your body shape. It's also changed you energetically. And now where do you go from here as you enter into your eldership, as I do?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that I don't know how to answer that one. Um, I I suppose I just put one foot in front of the other. Um, I don't I don't I mean I've been through some more changes lately. I've sold my business 2 years ago. So it's quite a difficult thing coming to terms with not working, um, not working in the same way that I was working. I mean, when you run a business, you're thinking about it 24 hours a day. Um, I had staff. I mean, I had a business where I made handmade leather goods. I was a leather worker. I trained as a saddler in Walsall back in fact, just after I finished Gerson therapy, I was looking at what I wanted to do, and oh God, I just remembered the conversation that I had with you. God, that was a long time ago. We had that conversation. I could do all these things, and I said, Malcolm, I don't know what to do. I can do. I've trained as a hypnotherapist. I'm I've been working with cancer patients, and I had I I had there was lots of things I could have done. Anyway, this night I was particularly confused, and I met you, and uh, and you just said to me, "What gives you joy?"
Oh, it's a great question, isn't it? Yes.
And again, that was another eureka moment when you said that. What gives you joy? And I said, well, actually, making, working with leather in the traditional way. Um, that's what gives me joy. And then it was that night after that discussion with you that I decided to set up my business as uh, it was a leather goods brand called Tanner Bates, and I started that it's been about 18 years ago, um, and then did that for 15 years, built the business, had 4 staff. It was great. It was a wonderful business,
And
but it was also
also,
good to sell it too.
no, I'm sure that's true, but you're actually really, really skilled. I mean, I wear a Tanner Bates belt because you gave me one, which was extremely kind of you. But it's like I just find it's a beautiful piece of it. You don't think of a belt as beautiful
No,
normally,
no,
but it's a beautiful piece of equipment, and I wear it every day because I always have a belt around my trousers. So I'm reminded of you every time I do my trousers up. So
that's the joy of making. I
yes.
mean, I've got in our kitchen, we've got so many different pots, from potters that all over the world that I know and friends, and every time I eat something or drink my coffee out of a mug, I think about the person that made that.
That's nice. That's nice. Yes.
So I mean that making is a wonderful thing.
So when I ask you the question, where do you go from here? What I'm hearing is that actually you're letting life lead you rather than you're going, this is where my passion is now. Or I could ask you that same question, and what brings you joy, John?
What brings me joy? One of the things that brings me joy, apart from my loved ones, um,
By the way, don't underestimate that. I think that's also a statement that actually you're capable of creating deeply loving relationships. I know you've been together with Debbie for a long time now as well. And when I see
well,
you together,
yeah,
I see the beauty of your relationship. I know all relationships have that, but
sure. We
yes.
have 12 grandchildren,
Wow.
and so that's wonderful to have children in my life. But we've also got surrogate grandchildren as well. We're typical grandparents, I think, but we've still got quite a lot of life and enthusiasm and love to give. And so we seem to adopt others as well along the way, children who don't have grandparents nearby or something like that. But
Mm.
that gives me joy. Another thing that gives me joy still is making. Even though I've sold the business, I still make. I still work on commissions and occasional exhibitions. Um, but my regular daily program involves swimming, which I do I swim around 3/4 of a mile to a mile a day. Um, and that is so settling somehow.
Mm.
However I feel when I wake up, I'm very fortunate that we have a river outside the house and I'm able to swim for miles just outside my door. But we're on the River Dart in Devon, and that just starts my day in a way that is better than anything else.
It's funny because one of the most memorable evenings of my life. I went with you in it was a kayak. And I don't know what these boats are called, but I went with you down the river at night. It was dusk, and it felt like pure magic. And we parked on an island, and we're sitting there, and then along comes this chap who starts talking to us, and it was the guy who'd written The Horse Whisperer, Nicholas Evans, who'd written The Horse Whisperer, and we had such an extraordinary evening. It felt like I was in a magical land with you out on the river.
Yeah.
So is that you bring to your life also?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And when the grandchildren come, we do a similar trip, Malcolm.
Oh, lovely,
Yeah,
lovely.
yeah, yeah.
That's really beautiful. So we're coming towards the end of our podcast. It's been really lovely hearing your story. I've heard it in bits before, but not in this detail.
Mm.
And I always ask the question at the end of the podcast, what's the particular dragon you've had to slay in order to become who you are? And when I say slay your dragon, I don't mean to kill something. I just mean what is the thing you've had to overcome, the obstacle you've had to overcome in order to be you at this stage in your life?
Um, I, I think it's. I should have thought about this before,
No,
but
no, I like it
I,
coming spontaneously. No, no, that's good.
I should have guessed that was going to come. Um, well, I'm not. I don't know if the dragon actually died when I slayed it, because I think it reoccurs. Um, and I think it's to do with responsibility. Um, it's to do with taking responsibility for my actions.
Mm.
Um, and uh, I mean, if my life before, I really had to clean up my act in lots of ways. I wasn't a good example of a father to my children. Um, and I regret that. Um, and it was to do with taking responsibility for myself and my actions. Um, and that still goes on. That
So
I
it's an
still have to
ongoing
bring
practice.
that into I,
Yeah,
I still have to bring that into check.
yeah. What I'm hearing is that the word that sticks with me is introspection. That actually we are constantly in a situation where we're designing our lives, and I'm hearing that you've designed your life in a couple of really big ways. First with the Gerson therapy and cancer, and second with the ketogenic diet that you've adopted. And I can hear that actually that you're dedicated and that you're also in a process of practice in your life. And I believe that's what evolves us actually is staying with that practice and bringing it through. So I'd really like to thank you for what you've shared with our listeners this morning. And it's really lovely that you can talk so ably about and articulately about your story.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you, Malcolm.
Good to see you in good
Bye.
health. It's decades on from terminal diagnosis. So,
Yeah, yeah. Good to see you too.
yeah, thanks a lot.
All the best.